You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi everybody, and thanks for coming back to the podcast. This is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, and I'm your host Steve Adams, the aforementioned Mighty Blue, and this is our 323rd show. Today we've got a couple who have appeared before on Jester's Section Hiking Show. They are Nathan and Kimm Wright. I was at Trail Days this weekend, and I'd originally intended to do a Trail Days show, but to be honest, having turned up late, I rarely left my spot in the author's tent, where I met a whole bunch of you who were stopping by to say hello and sometimes to buy a few of my books. So thank you, by the way. One woman, Alicia, who told me that she was a big fan of the show, told me to stop being so hard on Pennsylvania, where she's from. Sorry about that, Alicia. Though, if you get the chance to do the trail, you'll know exactly where I'm coming from. Anyway, I was staying at Lady Di's B&B in Damascus, where I met up with Nathan and Kim and their buddy, the legendary Nimblewill Nomad, who was a charming guy, by the way. We were talking about an issue of particular interest to all three of them, so I invited Nathan and Kim on the show to follow up on that subject. We're going to be hearing from them in a moment. Also today, some of our surviving class of 2022 members checked in with me. Trumpet and his dog Frankie, as well as Dom Tammaro, or Can Do. At Trail Days, I actually met up with, and had a couple of beers with, of course, our threesome from the class of 2022, Kira, Ryan and Brittany. They were intending to get back on the trail right after Trail Days. Then I have some great news from a former guest before finishing up with the remainder of Chapter 1 of Then the Hail Came by George Stephanus. From the emails you send me, this is turning out to be a popular choice. So let's get on, and I hope that you all listen to this with an open mind. It's about a subject I'd heard about, yet I really didn't know many of the nuances of the issue. Here's Nathan and Kimm Wright. So last weekend, I was staying at Lady Di's B&B in Damascus, Virginia for Trail Days. I didn't know it before I got there, but also guests at Lady Di's were Nathan and Kimm Wright and the legendary Nimblewill Nomad. Today on the show, Nathan and Kim have agreed to come on and talk about something that we all talked about at breakfast that day. So welcome to the show, Nathan and Kim.
Thank you for having us.
Now, I know that you've been on Jester's podcast before, and your particular love is the Pinhoti Trail. And for those who don't know, tell us about the Pinhoti and how you're both involved with it.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely enjoyed being on the podcast with Jester. The Pinhoti is a 350-mile trail. It goes from a little town called Wagufka, Alabama, near Flag Mountain, all the way up to North Georgia. And it is in the Appalachian Mountains. It is an absolute beautiful trail. It's been evolving over the last 40 years, finally in its last state of terminus points. But it is part of the Eastern Continental Trail from Key West to Canada, and it's now it's part of what we call Bama to Baxter. So you can connect today from the Pinhoti. We terminate into the Benton MacKay Trail, and you can connect that to the Appalachian Trail. So we're part of that great Appalachian mountain system.
Right, and of course, Nimblewill Nomad, when he hiked last year, with you actually, I think, Nathan, for some of the time,
yes.
He went from Flag Mountain all the way to Katahdin. What was that like? What was that like to be with him?
For him, he'll tell you it beat him up. It's an additional 420 miles, so it was a 2,620 mile trip for him at age 83. It was more than he thought it was going to be for him, for a man who's hiked thousands and thousands of miles. But it was a great trip.
And this is where we get to the subject we talked about at breakfast last Saturday, because it's kind of appropriate from what you just said. Tell everybody what we were actually talking about.
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of an initiative, again, out of Alabama, I would say a small part of Alabama, to try to coerce or push or what have you, the Southern Terminus of the AT, move it into Alabama. They're specifically wanting to move it to Chehaw State Park. And we, and I say we, collectively with hikers and clubs and organizations and other groups that we are opposing it strongly and just want to make sure that the hikers' voices are heard, that we don't want this to happen. And it's not all of Alabama that's pushing for this.
So, as somebody who is closely involved in the Pinhoti, by the way, tell us, you've got a hostel on the Pinhoti?
Yeah, we do. You do. Kim, you want to talk about the POC?
Yeah, the Outdoor Center is a full-service hostel that provides beds, shuttles, supply. We do planning. Basically, the only full-service hostel on the trail right now, and it has given us a great opportunity to really spend time with hikers and get a pulse on what they want as far as hiking and the hiking community goes.
Right, and so somebody who is not only actively involved in the Pinhoti Trail. Why would you be against it when it would bring you more business, or is that not a consideration for you? What is the main consideration of why you're actually against it?
Yeah, so that's the main question. Everybody says, like, "Oh my gosh, you're against it. You must be against the economy." Blah blah blah. And it's absolutely the opposite of that. First off, it's you got to point out that this pushes to not even include the southern half of Alabama, which we don't want that either. But they don't even want to include the whole Pinhoti. They want just a portion of it. So in that regard, I think it's a little bit slighted. But even if it was, we would still be against it. We believe that Pinhoti stands on its own. The growth that we've seen over the last few years is phenomenal. We see that happening and continuing to go up up in growth. We'd like to see that happen organically. We do have a great identity and community around the Pinhoti. We would hate to see that go away by having another trail like the AT on top of it.
So is it because you'd feel that the idea is to effectively subsume the Pinhoti within the AT? Is that what they're trying to do?
That is, so that was
because because they can still do that. They can do exactly what Nimblewill did last year, couldn't they? If they wanted to hike the whole thing, yeah.
You can do it. And we call it Bam and a Baxter. And I'm going to be honest with you, we have a lot of people doing that, especially since he did it and made it so popular. We had a bunch of people still on trail today that started at Flag Mountain and continuing on to Katahdin, doing what we call Bam and a Baxter. So it's attainable.
As a matter of fact, we ran into a bunch of those at trail days that started at Flag Mountain. So it was a great, kind of a great reunion of sorts to be able to see those people that started in Flag Mountain at the Southern Terminus of the Pinhoti Trail and have continued on by way of connecting those three trails.
Sure. And so there's nothing to stop anybody doing that. So, and the hikers you've spoken to about it, what has their reaction been? For example, the ones who actually are doing that trip this year, do they say they wish the AT had been back at Flag Mountain or somewhere like that?
I've not met one that wants it. It's overwhelmingly no, don't touch the AT. It's a protective thing of the AT, right? So if you've been on the AT and you love the AT, you might understand it, but let's don't move that. And if you've hiked both on the AT and the Pinhoti, you see a contrast of the solitude of the Pinhoti, where you can go out and hike several days and not see anybody else, which a lot of people love that.
Of course.
So they want to keep that. And there's that, it's kind of like the AT was back, maybe in the 70s, where you can go out and not be around 100 people at a shelter. And maybe one day, the Pinhoti grows to that, but hopefully, in that growth pattern over the years, through organic growth and sustainability, we're prepared for that and we can figure out how to handle it rather than, bam, just slam it on us.
Because there's quite an infrastructure situation to think about. So, Kim, tell us about the infrastructure and how that would impact people in the clubs down there, and what these proponents of this move want. How that would impact everything to do with the infrastructure.
Sure. Our from Cheehaw north to the Bent McKay Trail, there are 3 communities that are named trail towns. There's Heflin, that would be Piedmont, and that would be Cave Springs. Sure. Each of those representatives from those different trail towns, they they vocally state that they're not ready for that type of impact, that they don't really want it, that number of people, they don't have the infrastructure as far as hotels, as hostels. There are resupply options, but they're in the mindset of, as the trail numbers grow on the Pinhoti, so does the number of businesses that are willing to help support those. And it is, like Nathan said, growing organically, not just kind of all of a sudden once here we are, we've got 500 hikers a day and we have no way to support them. That's going to really be a black eye to the state of Alabama if that happens.
Right. And I noticed the man himself, Nimblewill, got quite head up about it when we were talking about it last week. He's a passionate man, isn't he?
He is. That he is.
He is. And, he takes a lot of pride in the trails. He's hiked pretty much all the trails. But he, the argument for this in this initiative is that they claim this was Benton MacKay's dream. And it's simply not the case. A lot of research by Nimblewill himself, books. We've talked to authors, biographers. There is not one instance of on record that Alabama was in the dream. This was an initiative of the Pinhoti and folks involved on the Pinhoti to connect to the AT, not to combine the trails.
Right. And I'm going to come back to that later, actually. I've got a quote I read, which was quite interesting, because, the claiming that it fulfills Benton MacKay's actual vision is quite a strong argument they're trying to make. And yet they're slanting it slightly different from what he actually said, aren't they, as I understand it?
Yes.
Right. Okay. And actually, I did read a quote from a guy called Chris Blankenship, who's the commissioner of the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. He said, "There's something magical about the idea of linking Maine's highest peak with Alabama's highest mountain," said Chris Blankenship. "Hikers who complete this feat would have the satisfaction of having travelled the entire length of the Appalachian Mountains in America, and it would also realise Benton MacKay's original idea of linking Maine with Alabama." I found nowhere. I've been trying to find it. I found nowhere that link has been made. So it seems a lot of people are against this. Who's actually for it, and why are they for it?
If you don't mind, if I just jump in real quick on that quote by Chris, one of the things that he said was that it would connect, that you would be able to hike the entire length of the Appalachians. And that in itself is not a true statement. If you're going to hike the entire length of the Appalachians, then you would start at Flag Mountain, but then you would also continue into Canada. So that statement in itself is not really a true statement.
But guess what? It's already there. You can do it
and it's
today.
already there.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a name change to make that happen. And Nathan, I'll let you go ahead and, I'm sorry, finish that question. I just want to throw that in there.
The question about who's behind it.
Yeah.
So there's a guy in Birmingham named Tom Crosby that's basically a fundraiser, works for Chamber of Commerce, and I think he's behind this with one other person named Jeff Hayes, who they're taking it upon themselves to push this initiative and go the political route. Unfortunately, they're taking a route that's not including the users, the user base, the hikers, even ATC. They're trying to go around all these groups and go from the top down and push it down on the community.
And just come back to that then. So let's come back from that. So the ATC, have they made a statement about any of this, or are they just waiting for stuff to happen?
No, so this is not the first time Alabama's tried this. In 2010, there was a push.
Right.
And ATC came out with a resolution, official resolution on the books, stating that the terminus will not move from Springer, and they will not move it into Alabama. At the same time, the Georgia State Senate passed a resolution that they would not want the terminus of the AT to move, and specifically, along with the Georgia Appalachian Trail Club and the ATC, they would support not moving the terminus specifically to Cheaha Mountain, naming the reasons of not having a terminus in a populated area with buildings, roads, and other people. They want it to be a secluded spot on top of a mountain that you can
That
only
was
get
interesting.
outside.
That was interesting to me because I actually said to you when I won, they just moved it down to Amicalola Falls, and you straight away jumped down my throat when we were having breakfast. So tell us about that. I don't remember any, and that's a great argument, by the way. So just tell us, reiterate that. That was quite interesting.
Yeah. So specifically in the Georgia State Senate resolution, they do not want the terminus. They named Cheaha because that's what happened in 2010 again. But the reasons for that are they don't want it in a populated area with buildings and roads and other structures. It needs to be a footpath to get there only. And that's why there's an approach trail today from Amicalola.
I never realized that. And that makes much more sense. And the good thing is, of course, there's the parking lot a mile beyond. You can go there and just go back up to the top, which kind of works out for everybody, doesn't it?
I didn't know that when I went up. I had to walk the stairs.
Nor did I first time, but I did second time, and I used it second time.
But that parking lot is still a mile away from the terminus of the trail.
Yes, it is. But which is fine as well. Yes, you're right. Yeah. So I haven't. There's no real. You mentioned two people now. What's the motivation? Why do they want this? Is it money? Do they believe it's going to help people, or what is the actual purpose of actually moving that? I think the terminus.
They believe. Well, yeah, money's got to be first. That's the when you ask them, the only thing they talk about is economic impact. Right. They don't look at all the other negatives, but. So yeah, I think money is the number one thing. I guess notoriety. I don't know, but to me that's an insult to the Pinhoti. I mean, I think the Pinhoti can stand alone and bring just as much impact in the future and notoriety as well.
And once again, you're not stopping anybody to do that whole extended hike. They can do whatever they like, and you will build that up. And so what is the infrastructure like currently on the Pinhoti then? Tell me what, for example, if suddenly in 2024 it was moved, what would happen?
Yeah, so that's a big concern, and one I talk about a lot because we do look at the AT and we work with the ATC on what problems they're having today and what do they think the causes are. Looking at the numbers that they have, the Pinhoti grew and it evolved in such a way where the oldest section of the trail has more shelters.
Right.
Today at the southern end of Alabama, we have one at about mile 3. Our next shelter is at mile 87. So we don't have a lot of shelters.
That's a long day, isn't it?
It is. It's a long day. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Talking with the ATC, shelters could be a problem. So we're really stepping back and looking at that and seeing what that means. But the biggest problem, and again, talking with the ATC, that you got to look at is waste management. When you start putting that many people on a trail, you need to think about waste management. And that's something that Pinhoti does not have today. Privies and, you start pouring that amount of people on here, that's going to be a real issue.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So what is the, because you mentioned something coming up before the end of this month, is that something in the the Alabama government? What's going on? Yeah,
so there is there's an amendment to the Alabama state constitution that is coming up for vote. It's called Amendment 1. Uh-huh. And it is it's something we do support, but it's been questioned because of the stance of the state parks on this issue about what are they going to use this money for. Right. Basically, they're going to authorize the issuance or sale of some bonds of up to $85 million for use at the state parks and historic sites. But it's earmarked specifically for improvements, renovations, constructions, acquisitions, provisions, things like that. And I have an inside information here that says I can name these things. If you're familiar with state parks at Alabama, you'll know some names here. But new cabins at Wind Creek, upgrade several of the loops at the campground at Oak Mountain, rebuild Cheaha's Motel, Lake Lurleen State Park campground rebuild, add cabins at Chewacla, campgrounds and other camper cabins, then bathhouses and amenities at several day use areas.
So there's quite a wide distribution of that money if they get it, which you obviously support a lot of those things, because I presume that will benefit the Pinhoti as well. Is your objection or your concern that they may feel that they can use that money then for publicising the Alabama to Katahdin, whatever they call it, the movement? Is that what you're worried about?
That's been a concern of people, and we get asked that a lot. And quite honestly and sadly, we get asked from hikers, how do they get around Cheehaw, because they don't want to go support Cheehaw because of this. Look, we love Cheehaw. We love state parks. Kim and I were actually married at Cheehaw in 2018. So that's a special place for us.
Sure.
We do support this amendment, and we encourage everybody to do their own research and, vote where your heart is. But it would be a big benefit for Alabama.
What's the oversight of those funds then? Do the government keep oversight of, or the local government keep oversight of those funds, or once the park gets it, can they literally do whatever they want with it?
No, this would be specifically for those uses that are listed in the amendment. As far as oversight, I don't know how all that stuff in the government works. That's above my head, but yeah, it is specific use for that.
And I saw this article this morning in the Alabama News Center, which I presume is an internet site. Its heading was "Extending the Appalachian Trail into Alabama, a natural," say advocates and state conservation officials. And its first line was, "For decades, Alabama hiking enthusiasts have dreamed of seeing the venerable Appalachian Trail, AT, officially extended into the state." Can I presume that's not a correct statement?
It's not. I mean, if you go back 20 years before the Pinhoti was anything, it'd be a lot easier to convince the user groups in Alabama. Now, that's one thing. You go outside of Alabama and you go talk to the AT hikers and the businesses on the AT, specifically in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee. Yeah, they're not going to like that. The ATC's not for it. They never have been. It's a losing battle, and I think that's what bothers me is we're putting, and I say we, I mean both sides of this, we're putting a lot of time and energy and resources into something that has very, very, very little chance of happening anyway because of the opposition.
You know what? These days, you never know what's going to happen, do you? So you've just got to keep an eye on things.
That's right.
What's the next steps for you? You're obviously going to keep going against this, but sometimes it's almost like politics moves in an entirely separate realm, and things could be moving through almost without people knowing. So how do you keep an eye on this?
We focus on the Pinhoti.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
We focus on growing the Pinhoti. We focus on the businesses surrounding the Pinhoti and the communities around the Pinhoti, which I feel like is what we all should be doing anyway, instead of arguing over the name of the trail that can be walked right now.
Right. Okay. And I must say that the article I quoted, the Chris Blankenship from, several other people actually added their voice to that article as well in practical terms. I kind of wonder if any of the proponents of extending the AT to Alabama would like to come on the show and debate the merits with one of you or both of you, Nathan and Kim. Do you think is that something you'd be up for?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd love to talk about it.
And it's never been an open discussion with both sides.
Well, don't you think that'd be good? They may have some good points to make, by the way. So I'm sure you'll be prepared to defend your side, but they've got to be prepared to defend their side. If all they're doing is going through politicians, then that always worries me anyway. So I tell you, that's an open invitation. I'll set it up if they want to do it, but you never know whether they will or won't. I want to now talk about when we were at Damascus, you said you got quite an exciting plan for the Pinhoti season kickoff. What's that all about?
The weekend of September 23rd through 25th, we are super excited to host the first Pinhoti Fest, which will be the event that kicks off our hiking season. The hiking season for the Pinhoti usually runs first week of October through mid-May, and we are just in the planning stages now of incredible speakers, vendors, musicians. We have hikers coming over. We've got the park reserved downtown Sylacauga, and we're going to turn it into a big camping weekend to kick off the hiking season. So that's it's kind of our way of saying, you know what? We are the Pinhoti. We're proud of the Pinhoti, and we're going to support the Pinhoti.
You got T-shirts saying Pinhoti proud.
That could happen. We'll just wear our Pinhoti forever shirts right now.
And that was a surprise to me that you said the kickoff season. Why is the kickoff season in Alabama or on that particular trail in October, where the AT is in March, or sometime in March? Yeah, why is that such a good time to hike it?
Yeah, so if you think about starting from North Georgia going north, you're looking at following spring.
Sure.
And you kind of stay in the cooler weather. About June here, it gets too hot to hike. It's dangerously hot. Our water sources dry up. It's just not smart. So we close down June, July, and August. We discourage hikers actually because it's too dangerous. But in the fall, we're a great fall and winter and spring trail. We have people hike all winter long. So
it's a 340-mile hike. So that can be done in, for the average hiker, I guess, a month.
Yeah, under a month. Yeah, 25 to 28 days is average. Yeah.
Which would be nice. And I suspect that'd be, and how similar to the AT is it?
In a lot of places, you won't tell the difference. It's very similar.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of people underestimate
84 miles between shelters isn't a great thing.
Well, there's a difference there. But as far as the woods and the terrain, it's very similar as like North Georgia, North Carolina, parts like that.
And how are you planning to develop it? Because I know it's about, is it 25 or 30 miles of road walking on it? How will you develop that and try to get it off the roads?
So in Alabama, we have 16 miles left on the road. We work with different clubs and organizations that we happen to be a part of. And some, the Conservation Fund is a private organization that purchases land for recreational use like this. And they give it over to us and let us build trail on it. So by the end of this year, we'll be down to under 8 miles in Alabama. And a long-term plan, I'd say 5 years maybe, we'll be down to 3 miles in Alabama. That'll be our final.
Right. And would you, this is going to be a statement of some irony, you ever think of extending the trail anywhere or changing the Southern Terminus anywhere?
No, so that's the target was Flag Mountain, and it took a number of years to get there. And over the years, it's progressed and gotten there using road walks and then converting that over to woods. But Flag Mountain is the final resting place for the Southern Terminus, and then the Northern Terminus, it dead ends into the BMT, and I don't see that moving.
Right. So when people finish on Flag Mountain, do they get Nimblewill come out and shake their heads for them?
Well, he lives in a cabin about a quarter mile below the tower. On the top of the mountain. So yeah, if they're going northbound, they see him after they summit. If they're going southbound, that right before they finish, they get to see him. But yeah, he's there to greet folks. He loves to see hikers.
Okay, now hopefully we've covered most of the points you wanted to cover on this issue. Is there anything else you'd like to say about this that I haven't covered, or you think we've covered all the bits you needed to cover?
Yeah, I think one point that is made by the proponents of this move of the trail is that it would alleviate problems at Springer. And my problem with that is it's like cutting a piece of paper in half. You have two. You don't have any more paper than you did. You're moving the problem. You're not solving the problem.
Sure.
I think with a separate trail like the Pinhoti, we're seeing people come to the Pinhoti because they don't want to go to the crowds on the AT. So sure. I think we are truly serving that pressure alleviation at some rate now. And as we grow, we'll continue to do that. So I think having a different trail actually helps that problem rather than just moving the problem from Springer to Alabama.
Sure. And how can people express themselves about this? Is there anywhere they can go to find out more information, or any way in which they can contact people who may have some influence on this?
Yeah, so we have a petition going right now at change.org, and we get the link for you put down in the description
sure.
that people can go to and show their support. And, we're just a bunch of hikers, right? But we want our voices heard. We want the
sure.
user base to be heard. So, if you want to sign the petition, go to change.org and sign up and let us be heard.
No, I mean, I agree, Nathan. This is absolutely critical that hikers have something to say in this, because they're the ones who actually be using it. And for people who've got money, maybe some of these guys are keen hikers as well, but for people to allow their money to run roughshod over hikers would not be a good thing. So hopefully I'll put the link of the show notes for the change.org, and hopefully somebody will want to come on and talk about it, and we can have this conversation further. But I appreciate you coming on the show and talking to us about it.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
I've got to say, that made a lot of sense to me. What about you? Am I missing something? I'd really like to know what you think. And of course, I'd love to moderate a debate between Nathan and Kim and any of the proponents they mentioned. Wouldn't that be a novel thought? Have a debate about the issues. You can tell that those two feel they're on solid ground. I wonder if there is somebody out there prepared to present a counter-view. Write to me. Let me know what you think at steve@hikingradionetwork.com. And if you agree with the Wrights, sign their petition. The link is in the show notes. Now, Dom Tammaro and his latest update. Here's Dom.
Hello.
Hey, Dom. Steve, how are you?
Hey, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You're one of our few hikers still on the trail at the moment. So,
really?
Well, no, there's still a bunch out there, but we haven't had a lot of luck this year. But you seem to be still going. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Earlier on, I got off the trail because of my foot and my pulled calf muscle. Those are doing fine.
Good.
Little bit of twinges in my left knee, but I take care of it, and I'm still cruising along.
Cruising along is a great expression. I can't remember when we last spoke. Rather, I think you were. I know you were either still in the Smokies or you're about to leave the Smokies. What was your general impression of the Smokies?
I think they were beautiful. I think they were challenging. I didn't find them more challenging than the mountains in Georgia or the North Carolina pre-Smokies, but I thought they were challenging, and I thought they were beautiful. I just, to me, Charlie's Bunyan, the view from Charlie's Bunyan is extraordinary.
It really is, isn't it? Yeah. Yes.
And it's like something out of a painting.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful.
So what about I must admit, I was pretty disappointed with Cleveland's Dome. There's something about going back up there with a bunch of tourists around there that sort of, I almost found it unsettling. What was it like for you?
It was, it's a little bit like Mount Washington.
Yeah.
When you climb up Mount Washington, New Hampshire, and you're met with a cafeteria.
It's very. That is a very welcome thing to meet, though.
Yeah. Well, I went up there, and I knew it was going to be tourist,
sure.
And I was heartily expecting trail magic, but I don't have my yogiing skills developed to the point that anyone offered me anything to drink or eat. But I thought it was great. It was a beautiful day.
Oh, that's always nice. Because you got a great view from up there, obviously, of being the highest point on the trail. You really do need to develop your pathetic loser look, which is what I tended to do quite a lot when I was on the trail, especially when I was trying to hitch lifts as well. So did you? Now I've done the Smokies. Actually, I've done them 3 times, but certainly on my 280 hikes, I've done them twice, obviously. And I had snow each time on the second half. Do you have any bad weather through the Smokies?
Just rain.
All right. Okay.
We had rain and some severe thunderstorms, but by then we were already in the shelters or tents.
Yeah, of course. I would say
kind
of got to do it.
Yeah, most of the Smokies, the weather was pretty cooperative.
All right. And then you got into Hot Springs, and you went to the amazing Elmer's. Is he still doing those tremendous meals, vegetarian meals?
No, he's not.
He's not?
He's, it was such a good place. I'm so glad I went there.
Good.
But you can tell, it's a lot of work for Elmer to maintain the place, to put on those dinners.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have much help. There was a a through hiker who got off the trail with an injury named Will, who was helping him, but they don't put on the dinners or breakfasts anymore.
Right.
And which, you know, I was disappointed in. I was expecting it. It's such a bastion of social justice and liberal thought. I thought, oh, this is a great place to be.
Yeah.
And that esprit is still there. In some of the evening, we had some evening conversations in the living room over some tea, but it really, because there's not a lot of help and the inn requires a lot of work, I think he scaled back a bit.
Right.
There were very few people staying there.
Oh dear, what a shame. There's always the Smoky Mountain Diner across the road though, so you can fill up with everything you like there, all the carbs you like.
I woke up so early to get down into Hot Springs.
Right.
I had a skillet breakfast, which is like a big mound of carbohydrates on top of a skillet. It was absolutely stunning.
And you told me in one of your texts that you've got to get new boots. You said your current boots are 5.5 pounds. I think somebody said to me that a pound on the foot is worth 2 on the back. So that's like 11 pounds on your back. What was your choice of boots in the first place, and why so heavy?
So I got these boots. I've been wanting to get these handmade boots from a shop in New Hampshire that's been in existence over 100 years, forever.
Right.
So that's what I did. They were heavy, but they fit like a glove.
Right.
They're beautiful. But they were just too heavy. And they became the evening topic of conversation whenever I would camp or stay in the shelters. People would look at these boots and they would say, "What the heck are you thinking?" You know, someone wanted to give me the trail name Everest because they thought I was going to climb Everest in these. And I think that their stiffness and weight contributed to my pulled calf muscle.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
So I mailed them home. And in Hot Springs, there's an outfitter. It's a small shop, but surprisingly, they had a really good selection, and I got the same type boots that I used when I walked the Camino. They fit great, they feel comfortable, and they're around 2-ish pounds.
And how does it feel? How different do they feel?
Oh, it's like night and day.
That's good.
I feel more nimble on the trail. I have lots of toe box room, which I like. But importantly, when I'm pushing off with my back foot, I don't feel the boot giving me any resistance either because of stiffness or weight. Right. And I feel like that makes all the difference. It's a much more comfortable walk. Good.
So that was a text you sent me last week. And as you know, I was then on the way to Damascus and so on. Along
with half of the hikers in Hot Springs.
I'm sure there were quite a few who came forward. Yeah. So what have you been up to since then? Since Hot Springs?
So I've been making my way to Irwin, and it's a nice. I wouldn't say gentle, but it's a beautiful area. This sort of pre-Damascus part of North Carolina and Tennessee. Yeah. And I'm going to stay at a hostel tonight.
So I'm trying to think where you are now then. So you got to Irwin. Did you go do that long climb up to Curly Maple Shelter after Irwin? Are you still in Irwin?
No, I haven't been to Irwin yet.
Oh, right. Okay. So you're on the way there now. Where are you staying tonight then? Uncle Johnny's?
No, I'm not that far. I'm not that close to Irwin yet. I'm staying at the Nature's Inn hostel.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
I think that there's new hostels popping up every year.
I know. I met a guy at Trail Days. He just handed me his card. Just said, if you want to tell people there's another one just outside the Smokies instead of Standing Bear, then I can I'll mention it. Any new hostels are always welcome, at least to try out. Certainly. Yeah. So generally, you're happy with your progress now?
Yeah. I'm still going slow. I met a guy completing his southbound hike from last year, and named Dr. Doolittle, and he and I we talked for a little while, and he said, "Boy, don't let anybody tell you you're going to get your trail legs after 200 miles." He said, "Give at least 500-700 miles, and you'll be good." And I'm about halfway there, so I thought, "Oh, okay, that gives me hope." When I started, it would take me to do about a mile uphill at a grade of 500 feet per mile. It would take me just about an hour.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I used to stop every 20 yards to gasp for breath and let the lactic acid sort of subside in my legs. So, I don't think there's any rush to get them, but when you get them, it is very noticeable, and you'll feel them as well. You'll wake up one morning, you'll start walking, and then at the end of the day, you'll think, well, that wasn't too bad.
No, now it takes me about 45 minutes, and I don't feel like I'm going to die. So I'm feeling better. You know what I wake up with, though?
What's that?
Hunger.
Oh, really? Oh, you're starting to get that, are you? Excellent.
So I'm starting to, I'll stop in at camp or at a shelter. I'll have what I planned for dinner that night, and then I'll have another meal from my bear can.
Oh, wow.
I'm definitely hungry.
Yeah. Well, are you losing weight yet?
I haven't weighed myself, but the end of my belt is extending maybe 3 or 4 inches further from the buckle than it did before.
That's it. Losing 3 or 4 inches around your waist in about 300 miles. That's pretty impressive. Oh, dear. Okay, man. Well, look, keep in touch. Let me know how it goes. And good to hear your voice. And we'll catch up again soon, okay?
Hey, let me tell you one thing. So I'm at Hot Springs. I'm at the brewery having a beer and a meal. And this woman was commenting on a rattlesnake encounter she had to these guys next door. And she was sort of including me in the conversation as well. And I said, "Oh, yeah, I had a rattlesnake encounter too." And I started to tell the story, and she looks at me and she says, "Are you Dom?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, I heard you on Mighty Blue."
I love it when that happens. Oh dear, it's funny. I can't tell you. Actually, I'm going to mention this on the show straight after I conclude this call. Actually, I'm going to mention this, but just to let you know, people say to me, "Oh, by the way, you've got a trail name now, haven't you?"
Yeah. My trail name is Can Do.
Can Do. That's right. Yeah. Well, somebody said to me at Trail Days the other day, he said, "I've been meaning to ask you this for ages, Mighty Blue." He said, when you introduce people, you ask them about their trail name, you ask them how they got their trail name, and then you call them by their real name. said, "Why do you call them by their trail name?" You know what? I don't know why I do that. I said, "I think you're right." Oh, it's funny. Okay, man. Well, look, you take it easy, and we'll speak soon. And just good luck with the rest of the hike.
Thanks a lot. I'll be in touch.
Okay, man. Take it easy.
Right.
Bye.
Take care, Steve. Bye-bye.
It's 5.5 pound boots. Must be like wearing a pair of astronaut's boots. I'm glad he sorted that out. He has a very phlegmatic approach, doesn't he? I actually saw a picture of him a couple of days ago. 2 of our previous guests, Deb and Danny, were staying at the same hostel as Dom and sent me his picture. He looks like a happy boy, and I'll share that in the show notes as well. And by the way, I still don't know why I talk about hikers' trail names and then revert to their real names in conversation. It makes no sense to me either. Just time now to thank all our donors before we get on. This week, monthly donors Todd Withrow, Suzanne Johnson, Sean Deadwiley, Anne Pickin, John Crowler and Jan Haley all stayed on board, while Betty McEnany increased her monthly figure. Also, Thomas Gallagher and Molly McCarthy donated. Thanks to all of you. If you want to donate, go to the Hiking Radio Network page and you'll find tons of donate buttons all over it. Now, also in the Mighty Blue class of 2022 this week, our totally unfazed hiker with a wolf. I caught up with Dan Whitesides, or Trumpet, with his buddy Frankie yesterday. As usual, he is very relaxed. Here's Trumpet. Hey, Dan.
Hey there.
So you got a day off today. Where actually are you then?
I'm in Athens, Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Pretty far ahead.
Wow. How many miles are you in then?
560.
And you started April the 2nd?
I did.
You're making some good progress, aren't you? How's it going?
Going great. I'm taking an impromptu zero because my mom mailed the wrong package on accident. So, but my next package is already there in Parisburg.
Oh,
but
right.
this one hopefully will arrive today.
Right. So you're going to, it's that horrible thing of waiting for a package to arrive. Oh my gosh, I hated that. And
Yeah.
and you're kind of committed, aren't you? Because you know, someone's taken the time to send them from home. You can't really just leave them behind. So I'm trying to think where you are then, in terms of what mile is that? 500 and something?
546.
Right. So have you done the Grayson Highlands?
Yeah. So we actually took that was probably the worst section yet.
Oh, wow.
We took the Blue Blaze that cut straight through. That's the old AT
Right.
instead of the reroute that goes around, because I found out the hard way that when your dog looks like a wolf, ponies and cows do not like you, and they will try to attack you. So we've had several cows try to charge us, and we've had a group of ponies try to back kick us.
Wow.
Wow, so that was terrifying.
That I bet it was. So did you not know that, or did anybody tell you that?
Nobody told me that. Definitely nobody told me. Everybody I met about the ponies, and I asked plenty of people with their dogs, like, how are the ponies? But their dog does not look like a wolf like mine does. So, and Frankie also gets really, really excited when he sees big animals.
Right.
Like, he couldn't care less. He could care less about a squirrel, but when it comes to a cow, he's like, that looks delicious. So yeah, I really had to macho man up and like step to him. I had to scream at the ponies and like almost hit him with my trekking poles, like really try to scare them away from us. And then the whole rest of the way, I was clicking the trekking poles, shouting out loud, kind of doing the whole bear thing.
That's such a shame. That's such a shame because it's such a lovely area. So you say there's a Blue Blaze Trail around it. So how did that work out?
It worked out great. Yeah. So we were at the Thomas Knob shelter, which is gorgeous. And then only had like 2 pony encounters, which I pretty much, the pony was on the trail. I would go like 50 feet off away from them, call Frankie to me, have him sit, and then go another 50 feet ahead of the ponies and call Frankie to me then, and then continue on. But then we left Thomas Knob around 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And it was in a really narrow stretch of the trail right before I took the Blue Blaze, and we ran into about 6 ponies with their with the fawns with them, and they were not having us. They were not having us at all. They were trying to back kick. They were stepping towards us. It was a stressful way to start the morning.
Yeah, I bet it was. Yeah. So I'm trying to. I tend to get lost where I am. 500 odd miles. I'm just trying to think. Have you been up? Is it Chestnut Knob Shelter? Been up there yet? I'm just looking at my own map.
No. So that's the one that's like a cabin, right?
That's right. Yeah.
No, so we're at 545.7. That one is, I want to say 24 miles from here.
Right. Yeah, you got some lovely place to go through. So where are you staying? Are you staying at a motel, you say?
The Relax Inn, yep, because it's cheap and dog friendly.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Has it been a problem getting a place for a dog? You mentioned last time it wasn't that easy.
It always is. Thankfully, this has been the easiest place, honestly. The Relax Inn, and then 2 places in Marion, the Red Roof and the Econo Lodge, were both dog friendly. Only an extra $10, which is,
fair enough,
pretty reasonable compared to $35 in Franklin.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, they tried to charge like by the pound. I told them Frankie was 50 pounds. He's 65, and they were going to charge me an extra $35 a night for him. So a $50 hotel room.
How does a dog do, especially quite a large dog, how does a large dog do physically? Do they actually lose weight when they're doing this, or you're making sure you're trying to keep his weight quite consistent?
I mean, just like us, he's lost weight for sure. A big part is that he's transitioning from his winter coat to his summer coat, so he's already slimming down.
All right.
But since we're doing more miles than I anticipated, and I always pack a lot more food, I've been feeding Frankie like almost 3,000 calories a day.
Wow. Wow. And everything you give him, he's going to eat, isn't he? So.
Oh, he gobbles it. I mean, when we're in town, I give him packets of anchovies, salmon, some herring, beef sausage, roast beef, some raw turkey bacon, slabs of smoked turkey. He eats just as good as we do, if not better.
It sounds like it's even better, actually. Yeah. And are you hiking with people, or is it? And I've often thought this when a couple goes together, it's often just them. And while you're not exactly a couple, you kind of are. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean, though, don't you? He's your hiking buddy, really. So, do you hike with others, or you just stay pretty much to yourselves?
Pretty much to ourselves. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's been a lot of great people I've hiked with. And I mean, even just sitting around here, I see a lot of people, but I hiked very fast.
Right. And
definitely try to do big miles, but I also like to rest a lot. But the only real people I've hiked with, actually, I saw them at trail days. These two people I hiked with until Fontana when I took my shuttle, and I met them in trail days. They're probably 40-ish miles ahead, and we have a plan. It was a better plan before my package was late, but I'm going to speed up a little bit. They're going to slow down, and we're going to aquablaze Shenandoah together.
Nice. So you were at trail days?
Yeah. So my mom joined me for a short section from Wilbur Dam Road into Damascus.
Right.
She'd never backpacked a day in her life. Did great, loved it.
Right. That's a nice run, though, isn't it? It's a pretty nice run.
Yeah, I chose it because I heard it was easy, and it definitely was like the best section. I think that, or like the Grayson Highlands, was definitely the best section for her to join me.
Right. Yeah. But you didn't come and see me though. I was there.
You were there?
I was at trail days. Yeah.
Oh, I was only there Friday night, so I left Friday morning actually.
Oh no, I didn't get there till lunchtime Friday.
So yeah, I left Friday morning. I did 16 miles, and then I got the easiest hitch of my life, and was like, well, why not? And got a ride back, and lo and behold, I ran into a lot of great people I hadn't seen in a while, like the people I'm going to aquablaze with.
Right.
And then the next morning, got a ride back to where I was, and just kept on going.
Right, fantastic.
So I'm definitely ahead of schedule, which is nice.
So you say you're doing long miles. What sort of miles have you been able to put in?
Like around 18. I guess on average, 18-ish a day.
That's a good number of miles, isn't it?
I like to think so. I mean, I'm carrying. So Frankie's got his backpack. He's carrying about 3 or 4 pounds of gear, and I carry all the food.
Right.
So honestly, on the last stretch, Frankie's food bag was heavier than mine.
So what do you do? Do you have 2 separate food bags? I presume. Then do you hang?
Yes.
Do you hang his food? Do you still hang his food every night or not?
His food goes in my earth sack, and I tie the earth sack.
Oh, you got the earth sack. Okay.
I do not have the patience for the whole bear hang. That, and coming from Colorado, there are no trees. I already have an earth sack. And honestly, after seeing some people's bear hangs on this trail, I'm pretty glad I do. Some of these people literally just set up their food for bears to grab them. It's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I do know what you mean there, yeah. I always had I always had the problem of chucking the line over the branch. It once took me 20 bloody minutes. It was more exhausting than the day's hike that day, I tell you. Where's next for you then? So you've mentioned Chestnut. We mentioned Chestnut Knob Shelter. That's a beautiful run up there. It's a great view into the valley below. You're making quite good progress. Have you started to think about where you're going to be at certain times, or is this just you're just letting it unfold as it happens?
I try to plan it out. Now that I've got to do it, I'm going to do 18 tomorrow to Lick Creek, then 17 the next day, possibly more, to some other shelter. And then from there, I usually just take it up in the morning. I'll hike. Frankie won't eat first thing in the morning, so we'll hike about 5 miles and then have breakfast.
Right.
And at breakfast time, I'll usually look at like where I'm going to go for the day. I always try to do at least 15. Just because I'm trying to catch up with my friends.
Yes, yeah. And I got
the energy.
And Frankie copes with that extra mileage, no problem at all.
No problem. That's the thing. If we do more than 15, I'll give him a little break throughout the day, and I'll take his pack for around 2 to 5 miles.
Right.
But, I mean, you can ask some of the people. We'll do 18 miles. We'll get to camp. I'll take off the pack, and he will start sprinting laps around the shelter. Just full-on zoomies.
That is funny. Okay, man. Well, look, you sound like you are having a blast. I'm so pleased that you're still going. Shame I missed you at Trail Days, but we'll catch up with you again in a couple of weeks' time, okay?
Yeah. Great to talk to you, man.
Okay, buddy. Take it easy, all right?
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers then. Bye. See, He's just having a blast out there. And Frankie certainly eats well, doesn't he? As you know, I'm not a big fan of dogs on the trail, but Dan seems to have it all in hand, and he sure knows his dog. He's got some great stuff ahead of him, and he is the only person I've ever spoken with who didn't like the Grayson Islands. It just goes to show, doesn't it? We all experience the trail in our own very special way. And talking about special, I got a call Wednesday morning, yesterday if you're listening on the day of release. I didn't recognise the number. It turns out it was from a previous guest on the show, JC Van Etten, or Catmando. Cat is finishing off the PCT hike he started last year, and guess where he was calling from? Well, I know you can't guess, but whatever, I'll tell you. He was at the top of Mt Whitney, and he knows how much I'd like to get at the top of Whitney, and he wanted to share it first with me. I was very touched, and we'll share a couple of his amazing pictures that he later sent me in the show notes. They are awesome, as is Cat. Finally today, we've got the rest of Chapter 1 from Then the Hail Came. I'm loving reading this, and I can tell that many of the things we've all experienced over the years have always been part of hiking. It's kind of reassuring, isn't it? I'll see you next week. Sunday, the 8th of May, 1983, 1 p.m, mile 63.4. Awakening in my tent just after midnight, feeling the need to go pay a visit to a nearby tree, I instantly felt a vague sense of uneasiness rippling through the dark forest. Outside, the air seemed leaden and dead. The evening breeze had died, and the gorgeous starry canopy beneath which I had gone to bed had faded to dark greys and black. Standing in the murky stillness on Train Mountain, I gazed out over black, lifeless valleys. A tiny cluster of electric lights flickered along the far eastern horizon, the first I've seen thus far from the Appalachian Trail in Georgia. I turned to the west and watched as the distant sky was briefly lit by a flash of lightning many, many miles away beyond that horizon. Dead silence, a somewhat eerie beauty with ominous undercurrents. It appeared that I had picked a bad night to pitch a tent. I awoke to a deluge of biblical proportions in the morning. There's nothing like trying to pack up everything you own in a downpour. My sleeping bag was soaked, my tent was hopeless, everything was drenched. Adding insult to injury, the rain came to a dead stop about 5 minutes after I had finished. I'm writing this entry at Addis Gap Shelter, 7.5 miles further up the Appalachian Trail, where I've stopped for lunch. My backpack must be 10 pounds heavier than yesterday, just from all the water which has soaked into my belongings. I feel a desperate need to keep driving myself now. My boots feel like sandpaper against that deep wound. 14 miles remain in Georgia, and I hope to cover 5 or 6 more of them this afternoon before I call it a night. It hurts like hell, but for once in my life, I have to find a way not to quit. Someone left a plastic container full of caramel corn at the shelter. My supply of solid food is extremely low, and I'm constantly hungry, but it would be disgusting to eat food like that when you don't know where it has been, right? Hey, it was delicious. You do what you have to do to survive. Night, mile 68.8. My tent is pitched in the woods just past Dix Creek Gap, less than 9 miles from the North Carolina border. Once again, I pushed myself past sunset in an attempt to make decent mileage in spite of all my physical infirmities. I can't let myself wimp out. My new mantra. In addition to the chunk missing from my little toe, I have developed huge blisters between the big and second toes on both of my feet. They each compete for attention with the scattered blisters on my soles and heels in the symphony of pain which walking has become. To top it all off, while driving myself beyond exhaustion yesterday in an attempt to catch up with Dave, I took a violent header and came down hard on my left knee. It was swollen and throbbing all day today. I had a faint hope of catching up to Dave, but obviously the 13 miles I eked out were just not enough. Tomorrow night, barring further catastrophes, I will be in North Carolina. Thank God. Georgia has been rough, and my luck here has not been all that great. Monday 9th of May, 1983. Mile 80.7. 1:45 p.m, mile 77.5, Bly Gap, North Carolina. Dix Creek Gap, in which I camped last night, is the point where the Appalachian Trail crosses a lonely stretch of US 76. I made my supper in a roadside picnic area at the crossing. While it was cooking, a backpacker came stumbling across the road. Dave. It seemed that he got a very late start yesterday morning, trying to wait out the rain, and I passed the side trail to Montre Shelter before he had set up. It appears I will have some company again for a while, after all, if I can keep up. We made camp a short distance from the roadside. A blaze of light woke us up at about 1 o'clock in the morning. A car was parked in the picnic area facing the woods around our tents, and people were thrashing around at the edge of the picnic area. We met the car's occupants when we made our breakfasts in the picnic area this morning. 2 guys had become lost on the roads and found themselves driving in circles through the mountains. They saw the picnic area, drove in, set up a tent by the light of their car's high beams, and then decided they would rather sleep in the car. Sounds like they had a pretty good buzz going. I awoke this morning at first light. The temperature had dropped down to near freezing and the breeze had died. A heavy, gelid mist hung suspended in the still, frosty air. Like most of the forests through which I passed in Georgia's Blue Ridge, this one was a maze of vines and creepers draping down from gnarled, moss-covered trees. I was an alien from a far distant country called New England. The cries of strange birds filled the air. I was less than 100 yards from a road, yet it was an intensely primeval setting. Once we had climbed above the valley fog, an awesome spectacle awaited. The sun was just below the ridges to the east. A long, broad valley buried beneath a motionless mass of low clouds cut through the mountains like a flash-frozen whitewater river. Low peaks near the edges rose above the stationary rapids like small islands. Long vapour waterfalls streamed down the surrounding slopes. The entire river tableau lay frozen in a split second of time until the sun appeared and slowly began to stir the placid morning air. Dave and I are now having lunch at Bly Gap, just across the state line into North Carolina. 1 state down and 11 to go. A large meadow runs down the side of the ridge from the crest here with an excellent view of the valley far below. It is a gorgeous afternoon, gauzy fair weather clouds streaking across a soft blue sky. I'm just going to lie in the sunshine and enjoy it for a while. My shoes, socks, tent, sleeping bag and towel are all spread out on the grass next to me, finally beginning to dry out from all that rain. Soon Dave and I will go to find the water that the guidebook tells us is located here, and we will tank up for the afternoon portion of today's adventure. Dave just asked me again if my bag was dry. I again told him it was none of his business. I guess experienced hikers must ask each other deeply personal questions like this a lot. He's looking at me, shaking his head, and muttering again. Night, mile 80.7. There was no water to be found at Bly Gap, and Dave and I were counting on it. One of the 2 springs mentioned in the guidebook was dry, and we could not find the other one. The guidebook's directions to this second spring were fairly vague. We gave up after wandering for more than a half hour on unmarked side trails. Therefore, we were compelled to make the steep 1-mile climb up Courthouse Board beneath a blazing sun with absolutely no water on a muggy, subtropical afternoon. Stretches of that climb were almost vertical. Near the top of one of the worst of these, Dave's canteen fell out of his backpack and slid all the way to the bottom. Dave later told me that he almost cried when he had to go back down and retrieve it. I think he was joking. I was not there when it happened. Once again, I'd fallen way behind. I almost began to whimper when I finally caught sight of a gushing piped spring ahead on the trail near Muskrat Creek Shelter. It was such a relief to see some good drinking water. My already damaged lips had been devastated, attaining the appearance and feeling of old cracked leather and turning black around the edges. Needless to say, I am now one handsome dude. I was feeling completely done in from the effects of dehydration, killing what was looking to be a good day for mileage. Dave and I stopped for the night at Muskrat Creek Shelter. It was just 4 o'clock. We'd hiked 12 miles today, with only 3 of them coming after our lunch break at Bly Gap. The one bright spot this afternoon and evening is Muskrat Creek Shelter itself. It is unique, an attractive and large wooden A-frame structure hidden in a dense tangled mass of rhododendron. I have never before seen these plants growing as trees, and here all around me is an entire forest, resembling a tropical jungle. With all of this exotic beauty, it is hard for me to believe that some jerk has ripped most of the nice wooden roofing tiles off the shelter to use as fuel for his fire. The place has been wounded, but retains its charms. I'm happy to be staying here tonight. Tuesday the 10th of May, 1983, mile 100.4. I fell asleep last night, still feeling a little discouraged by a day which initially seemed so promising for mileage and then had ended so badly. My stomach was increasingly grumbling about the prolonged lack of solid foods in my diet. I'd resolved to carry plenty of these from here on and never again to run out of water. Dave, who is more experienced than I, had brought solid food with him on the trail, but has now almost run out. As a result, the two of us spend a great deal of time after dinner sitting around the shelters, reminiscing fondly about steak, pizza, bread, fresh fruit, our favourite restaurants. It's mildly amusing the way our conversations manage to suddenly find their way to the subject of food from any and all topics. I felt unbelievably run down and sore when I woke today. One of the large blisters between my toes now had a small blister growing directly out of it, and that smaller blister had an even smaller blister growing up out of it. The deep wound on my little toe was becoming severely infected. It was one sorry specimen. Looking at myself, I could not imagine how I could go on even one more day. 5 minutes after beginning my hike, it was obvious that this was finally going to be my breakthrough hike. For some reason, after I started moving, I felt wonderful. All of the injuries still hurt like hell, but did not seem to matter. That was just background noise. I could feel the reserves full of power and sense the incipient strength of my will. For the first time on this quest, finally, I knew I could touch greatness. The air was cool and fresh. The scenery was an attractive mixture of rhododendron thickets, ferns, moss and leafy woods, and the trail sides were covered with legions of tiny, brilliant blue flowers called bluets, which have brightened the Appalachian Trail from the start back in Georgia. I saw a white-tailed deer crashing through the woods. A squirrel ran along a log past my feet, and I laughed. The trail itself was a piece of cake. I felt light-hearted and indestructible. As I was cruising along near Walderoak Gap, I met an older gentleman strolling down the trail from the opposite direction. "You must be a through hiker," he said to me. I laughed. "You mean you can smell me from there?" I can't explain it, but we hit it right off. We stood and chatted for a while, like old friends, and then he said, "I'm in the home stretch myself. I started from Katahdin 13 years ago," looking at me as if I was supposed to be as thrilled and happy about this imminent victory as he was. And strangely, I was. It touched something in me, and I grabbed his hand and shook it vigorously, feeling as proud and joyous for him as if he were my oldest and best friend. We both laughed at my enthusiasm, and he said, "Good luck. Hope you make it." How could I let him down? Perhaps for the first time in my life, how could I let me down? After that chance meeting, how could I not be great today? I was so psyched for him that I was able to put that adrenaline rush to work for me. I averaged more than 2 miles per hour all day long, compared to a 1 to 1.5 miles per hour pace that I had been running on this hike. Something kept haunting me. A look in his eyes, a sense of peace and of growing triumph. I wanted that look. A dim mental image of my own distant moment of imminent victory began to take shape in my mind. I stopped for the first time today after 5 miles at Standing Indian Shelter. Dave, who had been a little behind me leaving Muskrat Creek Shelter this morning, caught up to me there. He was feeling as great as I was, and we decided to each go for our biggest day yet together. The trail up to the top of Standing Indian was so well graded that I was able to cover the entire 2-mile climb in less than an hour without stopping for breaks. The summit was partially open with a 360-degree view, the best yet on the trail. Standing Indian is known as the grandstand of the Southern Appalachians because of its central location in that intricate maze of mountain ranges. Towering heights carved by green valleys stretched as far as the eye could see in every direction. The trail down the other side was fascinating. We followed wide grassy paths, old woods roads, along a frequently narrow ridge crest through countless thickets of rhododendron. There were some inexplicably barren, sandy and rocky patches in the midst of all of that lush foliage. We had already covered almost 10 miles when we stopped for lunch in a clearing at Beach Gap, 3 miles past the summit. The next portion of the hike was every bit as scenic as the mornings had been. It was mostly side-hill trail, well down from the ridge crest. The Appalachian Trail had journeyed through a landscape of twisted masses of rhododendron jungles breached by small rocky streams bordered by profusions of growth, even wilder and more densely entangled. At times the trail was a tunnel completely encircled by rhododendron, their thickly interwoven branches forming walls and a roof. After a while, I was making my way across a slope halfway up a ridge which formed part of the encirclement around a remote mountain valley filled with thickets of dense rhododendron and other lush vegetation. I came around to the head of the valley and encountered the stream whose roar had been audible across the valley floor the whole time. although the stream itself had remained invisible beneath the riot of foliage. The headwall was a neat little spot where a small but lively stream formed small cascades through and around a jumble of rocks and tree roots. Large trees draped with thick vines and covered with moss rose beside the bank amid the rhododendron. After that, it was 2 miles to Carter Gap, a good deal of the last mile and a half being along the ridge crest once again. From the gap, the Appalachian Trail left the Blue Ridge and swung around the bases of a couple of mountains to the beginning of the Nantahalas, a cross-range which it would follow westward towards the Great Smoky Mountains. When I reached ridgeline in the Nantahalas, the crest was narrow and the trees small, allowing constant partial views into the adjacent valleys. A great viewpoint of the surrounding mountains with haze-shrouded valleys had been cut out of the forest at the end of a short side trail along the crest of this ridge. By 4:30, when I reached Betty's Creek Gap, I had already surpassed my previous longest day, having hiked almost 17 miles. At that point, I caught an intense second wind and made the ensuing 2.5-mile ascent of Albert Mountain without a stop. The Appalachian Trail climbed diagonally across a steep mountain slope through dense thickets of rhododendron and other trees, with a precipitous drop often only inches away to my right and vertical rock walls rising to my left. I crossed a gravel United States Forest Service road a couple of times before the steep, rocky quarter-mile scramble over giant boulders to the summit and its fire tower. There were some great views from the sun-warmed rocks around the summit, and the fire tower provided us with vistas which eclipsed those we had experienced this morning on Standing Indian. After our break atop the fire tower, all that remained for Dave and me was a half-mile hobble to Big Spring Shelter, where I discovered amazing new frontiers of pain the moment I removed my boots and full circulation of blood returned to my feet. They were brutally bruised and battered by the miles. So were Dave's. We didn't care. We had come almost 20 miles today and passed the 100-mile mark on our hikes. We clapped upon our sleeping bags, too tired and sore to fix our dinners right away. We lay there, moaning in pain and basking in our own glory. We rode a soaring, emotional high all through the night, joking and giggling like little children. I proclaimed us both lean, mean mileage machines. A night such as this makes all the days of pain and fatigue worthwhile. I can do this. I finally know that I can do this. Wednesday, 11th of May 1983, mile 109.5. I slept late this morning. It was past 10 o'clock when I hit the trail. The footway was once again carefully graded. The miles drifted by pleasantly. After hiking 5.5 miles in just over 2 hours, I took a leisurely break at Rock Gap Shelter, relaxing and reading the shelter register. Registers are an interesting facet of Appalachian Trail life. They began as terse forms, where hikers would sign in with their names and the date, along with their starting point and intended destination, enabling authorities to gauge the density of trail and shelter use, while at the same time providing searchers with an idea of the last known whereabouts of missing hikers. Today, hikers and trail clubs leave thick spiral notebooks in each shelter, where backpackers write often lengthy entries which include notes to other hikers, comments on the trail, helpful information for fellow hikers, and the occasional humorous essays. They have become the best source of information and entertainment on the Appalachian Trail, as well as a link to other hikers. Some of the through hikers up ahead on the trail are almost beginning to feel like friends from my constant reading of their thoughts and plans. I made my own entry for the entertainment of those who follow. It is amazing to me how many prospective through hikers who started on the trail this spring have already dropped by the wayside. The attrition rate in Georgia alone must have surpassed 50%. I'm still here though. When I left that shelter at 12:45, the sky showed vague signs of possible rain, but the threat never materialized. The next 4 miles were basically connecting trail as the Appalachian Trail descended to cross old US 64 in Wallace Gap and then wound through quiet woods, crossing several streams. I encountered a group of women from the local trail club doing trail maintenance and stopped to talk with them. Dave, who had left the shelter much earlier than I this morning, had left a message with them informing me that he would be hitching a ride into Franklin, North Carolina from Winding Stair Gap, up ahead on the trail. He needed to call home and ask his family to send some new boots to his mail drop at Fontana Village, 57 miles up the AT. He also asked the ladies to tell me that he would meet me at the next shelter tonight. When I reached Winding Stair Gap, I found a parking area by the side of the new US Highway 64, a main thoroughfare in these parts. At the edge of the parking area, a pipe jutting out from a large rock formation was gushing out delicious cold spring water. I filled up my water bottle and sat down to drink my fill before continuing on the Appalachian Trail. I was extremely envious of Dave for being in a town. I was dirty and sweaty from 6 days on the trail, and my stomach was crying out for real food. Wesser, North Carolina, the first town on the AT, was still 2 days hike away, and that seemed like forever at that moment. I was tempted to try my luck too, but it was 2 o'clock, and Franklin was a 15-mile hitch from that spot. It's always difficult to obtain a ride when carrying a large backpack. As I sat there feeling sorry for myself, a pickup truck containing an older couple pulled into the parking area. The lady in the passenger seat rolled down her window and asked me if I needed a ride into town. What was I going to say? No? The next thing I knew, I was sitting in the bed of that pickup, rolling down US 64 into a lush green valley filled with the vibrancy of spring and the promise of cheeseburgers. They dropped me off at the local Hardee's. When the smoke had cleared, my stomach was the happy new owner of 2 quarter-pound cheeseburgers, a large order of fries, and a chocolate milkshake. Back outside, the world was all rosy and my stomach had shut up for the first time in days. I bumped into Dave walking down the street, and we decided to get a room in town tonight, seeing as how we were both already here. A local resident told us about a motel owned by an elderly lady who was partial to hikers, so we went over there to check it out. She told us she would give us a room for $12 if we wanted to share a bed, or we could pay $14 for 2 beds. I laughed and said to Dave, I don't know about you, but I think I'll go the extra $1. A laundromat was directly across the street, and so within an hour we were luxuriating in clean clothes and bodies. Rebirth. Tonight Dave and I visited a steakhouse. I feasted upon a 14-hour steak, garlic toast, and a baked potato with sour cream. It was a sublime experience. All of the steaks on the menu had cutesy little Western names. I felt foolish talking like that, so I attempted to order my steak by the description rather than by name. It was of no use. I wound up confusing the waitress, who finally blurted out, "Oh, you mean you want the Bat Masterson?" Dave got a real kick out of that incident and has persisted in calling me Bat ever since. After dinner, I stopped at a supermarket to finally obtain some solid food for the trail. I picked up Pop-Tarts, crackers and cheese. I will never again be without on this trip. It was 10 o'clock when I finished shopping. The streets were deserted except for me and some crickets. The store had been the only business in town still open, and it was just closing. I stopped to buy a Coke from something labelled Talking Vending Machine. Dropping my coins in the slot, I was treated to the tinkling notes of a music box playing the song Home on the Range. The voice sounded like Carlton the doorman on the TV show Rhoda. Thank you for choosing the Talking Vending Machine. Please make your selection. I obtained my Coke, the machine thanked me again, and I said, "You're welcome." The Appalachian Trail is a universe unto itself. Turning away from 1983 cutting-edge soft drink vending technology, I returned to the slumbering streets of a backwater mountain town. Strolling back to Henry's Motel, I mused upon the strange variety of experience which the journey had already provided. I had been out for 10 days. It is a weird and wonderful trail.